This is the January 6, 2022 Tri-Town Board of Health meeting. The meeting is being recorded and will be accessible to CTSB after this meeting.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I think the first order of business is to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Has everybody had a copy of that and a chance to review it?
Yes.
Anybody want to make a motion to accept those minutes?
I make a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. The next item is that we have received a open meeting law complaint from Mr. Gary Willie. And this is related to the way, and particularly the way I handled the meeting the last time. And I'd like to read Mr. Willie's complaint for you so you can see it. I think you all have copies of it, but I'll just read it into the record here. He made a few statements in the beginning, but the complaint itself is, I believe, the following, and that is that Charles Kenny is listed as the chairman of the Tri-Town Boards of Health and Stockbridge Board of Health. And the boards finished the last item on the agenda, and then Charles Kenny immediately closed the meeting. I spoke up, that is, Mr. Willie spoke up, and there was no public opportunity to speak, and I wish to give comments. Another person of the public readily agreed and wanted to speak as well. The chairman refused any questions from the public and claimed the public comment period was over. He claimed 7 people from the public spoke. I informed the board, I was in attendance for the meeting. Mr. Willie, when he says I informed the board that he was in attendance for the entire meeting at the legally posted time of 6 p.m. And the public comment period was never opened, as did another person from the public say that. The chairman refused to hear anything further. And when Mr. Willie asked permission to ask a simple question as to how we missed the public comment period, I said that this Charles Kenny said it was too bad and pulled the Zoom plug. Then Mr. Willie made a suggestion for an improvement, which is that the public comment period should be list a public comment period in all meeting agendas as a specific item just before adjournment, so the public can comment on the board discussions of that meeting. Allow some comment on previous meetings, also known as old business, that are relevant to later meetings. The chair must open the public comments agenda item like all other agenda items, so there's no confusion as to when the public can speak. Now, is Mr. Willie here? Is he present in the audience?
I don't think so, Mr. Chair. There's a Motorola Edge 5G UW person, but there's no name. Okay.
If anybody is Mr. Willie, will you please announce yourself somehow and tell us what's going on? Does that, Zach, do you have any chats there or anything from anybody saying he's Mr. Willie?
Well, there's no chat function, Mr. Chair, in this meeting.
I'm not seeing anybody. Oh.
Okay, let me go to this Mr. Motorola person here. Let's see. Zach, can you unmute the Motorola person just to make sure that we can confirm that that's not Mr. Willie?
On.
So he's gone now. That person's gone.
Actually, that person has disappeared. Okay.
Okay.
So right. So just for the board's information, I did contact our town council, the council for the boards, to gave the town council a copy of the open meeting law complaint, as well as asked if we were doing things properly, et cetera, and also told town council what we would be doing with respect to the meeting we were having tonight. And basically, town council said that we had no open meeting law violation, that it was not mandatory to have a public discussion or public input at any meeting unless it was a public hearing. And then it would be on the agenda. In addition, our agenda at the last meeting did not have any public comment listed on the agenda. so there wasn't any requirement to open it for that point of view either. And that it is basically the chair's discretion to ask anybody from the public to speak in the absence of a public comment. So I'd like to now throw this out to the board and see what you want to say about this or how you want to proceed with this.
We have one hand raised.
Well, before we, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, if I can add before we open up to the board as well, and I think, historically speaking, before Zoom and COVID, I think we always had a standing public comment on our agenda. And I just want the board to know and those there in the public, I don't think it was intentionally pulled as a public comment. I just think over the last couple of years, we only had put it on there when we had public hearings. And, reflecting back, I think it was a meeting that was a little bit confusing. I was short staffed. I myself was directing the meeting. I had it on screen share. And when I have it on screen share, I can't see the chats. I can't see the hands. And I just think it got really confusing at the end. And I think, looking around, the goal is to put the public comment section on every board meeting going forward to allow a public comment, regardless if there's a hearing or not. So I think, this is sort of, it's sort of like a learning moment that, we want to have an opportunity for public dialogue. And just, I apologize as well. I was doing multiple things during that meeting, and it just got really confusing at the end. And I think we'll do a better job as well. We'll have staff monitoring, helping me out on these meetings, and as well as the board. One of the things we're doing tonight is we're making all the board members co-hosts, meaning you have access to mute, entry, look at the chats, look at the hands. And during that public comment section, if the chair, myself, or Zach misses somebody, I want to lean on the board as well to look at the screen to see if we've missed anybody. So there's a lot of things we want to do a better job at. At any given time, we've never wanted to suppress any public comments. And in 22 years, we've never had an open meeting law complaint filed against the Tri-Town Boards of Health, which is a pretty good track record. I just think, we're not experts on Zoom. There's a lot of things going on. And I think, we're committed as a department, and then hopefully, and I know as a board, to really engage the public on public comments. And that's really all I have to add.
Now, I agree with Jim that there was a little confusion, and I accept responsibility for that too. The discussion that we had, which was, in my opinion, what I was looking at was simply establishing an agenda item for a future meeting. In other words, that whole conversation that we had that was prompted by Dr. Wohl's remarks, and then we had some other invited people from the public speaking with a slightly different point of view. It was my intention to establish that as a future meeting agenda item by establishing the importance of that item. In other words, first of all, we did not have any discussion of the item itself, which was Dr. Wohl's recommendation that there be a carding directive or mandate in town for vaccination confirmations. We didn't have any discussion of that. We simply had, from my view, a few people speaking to establish that this particular topic, whether or not people should be confirmed, have mandatory confirmation going into restaurants of their vaccination status, that this was such an important agenda item for the public that we should have a dedicated meeting for that. In fact, I would ask to have a hearing for that so that we can have adequate public input about it. And that was the somewhat ironic aspect of what we were doing, is that we were simply establishing this as an agenda item. And so that was partly my fault for confusing things. It was not intended at all, and we did not have a discussion really by the board of anything related to that topic. So I would ask the board to consider that topic to be a very important topic. And I think one of the reasons we're having the issue that we're having tonight is because it is such a controversial topic in town, in our towns. And I think that we should have a dedicated hearing to it coming up.
Mr. Chair, Jim Castanero from the public has his hand up. Do you want to just go around and give the board the platform first, then open it up to Mr. Castanero?
Well, this is what I can see that now. I think that the members of the board ought to weigh in and decide how they want to handle what has just happened. As I said, the town council said there was no open meeting law violation. We have no requirement to have public input about things. And what I would say is I'd like to have the rest of the members of the board weigh in on this and see what they'd like to do about it first. And then if Mr. Castanero has something to say specifically about whether or not there should be an agenda item in the future, then I think that's a reasonable thing to say. But I don't think we should be discussing or having public input about whether or not it's a good idea to have vaccination confirmation or not at this point, because it needs the public input in a very specific way that everybody can weigh in on it. We don't have that on our agenda tonight.
Anyone from Joanne?
I, for one, definitely think that the public should have a voice, because this board is made up of 3 towns, and the people that live in those towns that have to live by the directives or mandates or whatever the Board of Health does, it affects their lives. And I think whether we agree with their opinions or we don't agree with their opinions, they have the right to speak. And yes, you didn't do anything against the law, but for moral stands, don't you think that people should have a voice in our country? Because that's what we run on, is that we are free. We are Americans, whether we like their opinions or we don't like their opinions.
Are you speaking to me, Joanne?
I'm speaking that you said that we didn't do anything legally wrong, but morally, I think we have the right to let the public speak and say their piece. Every other board that I've been on, I've been in finance committee for 10 years, I've been on other boards, there's always a public comments period, whether it's legal to have it or not legal to have it. I believe people should be able to speak up. This is about their lives.
Well, I totally agree with you. In fact, the whole point of the last meeting was to set aside a special meeting to do that. That was what I was trying to do. I wasn't sure that people that on the board were convinced that it was an important enough item. So I'm totally in agreement with you about that.
I don't think that's the way it came across, though, Charles.
Yeah, no, I know. I apologize for that. Yeah, I think I made a mistake by confusing things. But the idea here is that my purpose and what I still would like to have happen is to have a dedicated meeting to look at this. And you know, if you look at it from the point of view of the public, and this is how I see it, is I totally agree with you. The public should have proper input, but I don't think it's proper to have public input for an item that hasn't been posted on the agenda when other people in the public may have a different point of view about it and aren't given the public notice to be able to speak in contrast to that. That's why we need to have a special meeting set up that goes through the proper publicity so that everybody can have a point of view coming in. So I'm totally in agreement with you, but we shouldn't let public discussion occur on a non-agenda item when people in the public who don't have that same opinion and might want to have said something different weren't aware that that was going to be discussed. That's how I see it. It needs, if we're going to have a discussion, a public discussion, it needs to be published so that everybody in the public can come in and weigh in on it. We can't just let somebody speak about a subject. I mean, we can potentially, but I don't think that it's fair to people who might, in the public, who might have a different point of view. So I totally agree with you. We should have a public discussion about this, but it has to be done in a way that is, it's publicized. And see, the last meeting, we didn't have this item publicized. The reason it was not to be discussed by the board. In fact, the only, you know, I, as chair, I have the prerogative to set the agenda myself anyway. I can do that without asking anybody's opinion about it, just go and set the agenda. But that was not how I was trying to do it, because I really did think that this was so important that I wanted to sort of stimulate some public knowledge about this ahead of time. And that was where I confused things for people. But as I said, I agree with you about having public input, but we need to publicize the instances when there will be public input, so people from the public with a differing point of view also have a proper warning that they can get the chance to speak to.
And like I said, Joanne, I think going forward, we're going to put public comment on every agenda, no matter what. And I just think it's, we'll want to set just some perspectives around that, because we could be having 5-hour meetings and, if you look at the city of Pittsfield public comment session, sometimes it goes an hour and a half.
Most public comments, like in big meetings, you get 3 minutes to speak and you're done.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
If we'll set a time limit, then it's not going to go on forever.
Yeah, and I think we'll do a good job at that. But I think at least I'm fully committed to putting that as a standing item moving forward. I don't think, if the board wants, you can put that to a vote. But we used to have it on there, just with Zoom and all this craziness going on, it just kind of dropped. And but Diane was next after you, Joanne.
My only comment was already covered. I agree there should be public comment, but I wanted to make sure that we did put parameters around it, because I've sat at some town meetings and other board meetings where things can go on for hours and hours and get dragged on. So, if we set up our rules about everybody's got 2 or 3 minutes, whatever, that's perfect. And the other thing I would add is that you'd say there's a time limit to how long. Do you want it to be an hour? Do you want it to be 45 minutes? How long do you want to sit in a board meeting? But for us to decide that before we do anything, that's all.
Other members from the board? Dr. Blagg?
I would also ask, consistent with at least the practice I've seen in town meeting, that the people wishing to speak identify themselves and indicate where they live as a condition of participation.
I know in Lennox has their town meeting, and if you're not a member of Lennox, you have to be invited and supported by the citizens of Lennox before you're allowed to speak. So that is a consideration. If you have somebody that just comes in from Pittsfield and wants to, do you want to start having everybody around or just the 3 towns? I don't know how you want to set that up.
Yeah, I know Pittsfield, because the reason why I know, because I live in Pittsfield, I watch those meetings. I think we don't want to do that, put limitations on residency. It's just, the goal is to have good public comment, respectful comment, good dialogue, and just let that kind of happen. Because, what happens if we, Lennox Board of Health, we had Dr. Chamberlain one time from University of New Hampshire. He's not a resident. He's an expert professor. So,
but he was invited in.
Yeah. So we'll just.
That's what I'm just saying. Like with Noel saying, ask them where they're from, just to make sure that, again, that you've got it down, and you want to hear the voice of the people, like Joanne said, in the towns that are going to be affected by the rules we put in. I want them to have, if you put a time limit on how many minutes you're going to have for public comment, and you see a slew of people that are coming from out of town and our own people don't get a chance to voice their concerns, that would upset me.
Well, I think it's up to the chair to take control of the discussion. That's one of my responsibilities. And I would say, first of all, Noel's point about making people identify themselves is I think that's a good standard procedure, number one. Number two, when we're having a public discussion, the people who discuss it have to be limited to a certain period of time, especially when we see there are a lot of people that want to speak. Maybe 3 minutes is a reasonable period of time for somebody to speak. And I think that when people are discussing things from the public, they should be confined to the topic at hand. And I think that's, again, up to the chair's discretion to decide if someone's discussing something that doesn't have any relevance to the topic to insist that the person confine themselves to discussing that topic. Otherwise, I think besides being civil when they're discussing things, I think that anybody should be able to discuss stuff. I don't see that we're going to have any particular problem with this going forward if we do it that way. I just want to, first of all, I just want to make sure that everybody understands here that we did not make an open meeting law violation, and I understand that legality is not the most important thing here, but that's the first procedural thing we have to get underway. That we all agree that this is what's taking place. Our town council says that that's the case, and I just want to make it clear to anybody that feels that this should be investigated further or do whatever they want to, that they should speak up now so that we can do that. Otherwise, we'll go forward with that. And then I think that I'm pretty sure that we can handle things in such a way that we convey to the public that we really do want their input. We want to have everybody putting this, in particular with this coronavirus, it's not going away. It's going to be around for a long time. And what we need to do is we need to have the public know that we are trying to do things with their cooperation, not just in spite of them. And I think that entails hearing everybody give their point of view, no matter what it is. And that's a very important aspect of it. And that's why, again, when we do discuss topics and allow the public to speak, it should be on the agenda so that everyone in the public gets the same opportunity to speak. Somebody, if we just let someone speak in a way that nobody else from the public knew that we were going to be doing that's not a fair question for the rest of the public. So that's what I would say about that. Now, Mr. Castanero is asking to speak for a minute. Mr. Castanero, I'm going to I'm going to let you speak, provided you confine your remarks to the topic at hand, which is which is basically the whether or not the agenda item that we had discussed before that I would like to put on the agenda for the next meeting is a good idea or not. So if you want to go forward and speak about that, please do it. Or you could speak about our open meeting law violation thing, and that would be another topic that we had just discussed.
Are you there?
We're here.
Yes, this is Jim Castanero. I'm from Lee. I'm a town representative for 37 years. And I was at your last meeting. I had a lot of questions. I'm really surprised you're even talking about passports in the first place. But for the open meeting thing, if you want any money from the taxpayers of Lee, you're going to let people speak. You're going to at least let them have 3 to 5 minutes to speak, no matter what the topic is, to do with health. You can't control the narrative. I mean, if you have a meeting, you have a meeting, but people have questions on other things and stuff. You just can't say you can't ask this, you can't say that. And as far as Mr. Kenny, you were really rude last week. I was just trying to say I wanted to talk. I'm talking on the phone. I don't know if I'm loud or not. And you call me a bully. But it's okay if you want to create two kinds of citizens for Berkshire County. That's never going to happen. I just want to let you know that. People.
I apologize, Mr. Castanero, if I treated you
I'm not
rudely.
apologizing for what I said. I meant it. So.
Well, I'm saying I apologize if I treated you rudely. I didn't really want to do that. But at the same time, what I will say is that I will stick to my guns about confining public discussion to the topic at hand. And we do not have the time, and it's not fair to the rest of the public to let people meander into other subjects at length. Now, if we don't have a lot of people speaking, I think that's reasonable. But I do think it's important, if we discuss things in public and allow public discussion, to make it very clear to the rest of the public that we're actually intending to do that, so they have a right, they have an opportunity to speak up as well.
But I'm saying there's other health issues in town and people have questions. like, let's say our PCB dump coming to town. That's going to be a major health issue. People got questions about that. They should, at the end of your meeting, just say, have a public comment period. If anybody has a comment, let them talk for 3 minutes, no matter what it is, and get on with life. If they have questions, answer their questions. Or I guarantee you're not going to get another penny from the taxpayers of Lee.
Well, I agree with you. Generally speaking, in the past, we've always done that. And that is going to be the case going forward. And I think Jim Willis made that clear in what he said there too. And I agree with you 100%. People should be allowed to do it. However, when we're dealing with certain kinds of subjects, we may have to narrow the discussion so that we can stay on track and afford people the opportunity to put in points of view related to that topic as opposed to other things. But otherwise, I'm totally in agreement with you. And I invite you in the future, if you have other subjects that you'd like us to discuss, to send them to me so that we can put them on the agenda so we can have a public discussion about it. That's the proper way to do it. And I'm inviting you to do that. Please, any subject you think is important for us to discuss, send it to Jim or the Tri-Town Health Department, and we'll put it on the agenda for discussion. That's the right way to do it. And I'm enthusiastically inviting you to do that.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you for your input. Anybody else have anything to say from the board or from the public?
I think we've covered our agenda items.
I'd like to ask Jim. I'd like to ask Jim to set up with the rest of us a date in the future to have a hearing to discuss Dr. Wool's suggestion. Does anybody object to that? Does anybody have anything to say about that with respect to that?
I think it's a good idea.
Very good idea. We had tabled it last time, so I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I can send out an email on potential dates, and the goal would be to solicit public discussion without taking any action, just to really get feedback from the public on that. The intention is to not draft the regulation and present it for approval. It's really just a broad discussion about the subject at hand. That would be the goal.
I'd like to ask the members of the board within your own areas of expertise to do your homework for that meeting, please, so that we can have a good basis for a really factual discussion, because I think it's an important topic.
Jim,
And I suggest all your members read the Constitution of the United States too. That's my final say.
Okay. Jim?
Yeah.
Yes.
I had a meeting with, it probably represented 12 of the restaurants in downtown. I had it with Charles. A lot of them wouldn't be able to make it to our meeting, but if they sent written comment, can I just forward that to you for?
Yep. So what the process would be is I'll reach out to each one of you individually to see, or I can send out a doodle poll to see what the date and time would be. And then we would actually put something in the paper. We would have to actually put a public notice in the paper for a hearing. And then I can send, and every time we do that, we always say, any written comments, phone calls, please send them by this date so I can put them all together for the board to review. And then we can circulate around. I'll talk to Clarence and we'll make sure we get the right information out there and have a good discussion about it.
I think because of the surges that are going on, I think sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I'll do my, well, we have to we have to publish notices in the paper. That takes more than a day.
Yeah.
Can we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, good evening.